Hello everybody, welcome back to another series of lectures about sonography physics. And today we'll start uh, discussing the sonography instrumentation. If you have this diagram here, this is like a chart and it shows the components, the basic components of the ultrasound system. And as you see here, we have the transducer, we have the pulser, beamformer, the receiver, scan converter, and the display. As you see here, I put here some arrows. The red arrow is the electric voltage that's delivered from the pulsar to the beamformer through the cord down to the transducer. And then I have put here the blue ones, blue arrows. These are representing the electric voltages that are formed here in the transducer and are going back to the beamformer, to the receiver, scan converter, and to the display. So this is like a short example of what we should discuss. The pulsar is the first part. This is the pulsar here, the pink part here. This is the pulsar. So the pulsar is also known as the transmitter, is responsible for creating and delivering electric spikes from the pulsar to the beamformer and then down to the transducer here. These electric spikes are responsible for what? For acoustic output power. The output power, that's the sound power that's delivered from the transducer. The PRP and PRF, these are the pulse repetition period and pulse repetition frequency. Also is responsible for the operating frequency. Some systems, some ultrasound systems, can change the frequency. You can adjust the frequency to either a higher frequency or a lower frequency. And who's responsible for this adjustment is the pulsar. So we'll go over these one by one, starting by the output power. So acoustic output power, which is in short we call it the amplitude or the power or the intensity of the sound. So we're talking here about the sound energy that is delivered to the patient. Okay, again we call it the amplitude or the power or the intensity. Okay, is it adjustable? Yes. What is the control key? The control keys are called either the power or the output power. These are either the soft key or hard key, but in short, we might have this term on the power or output power. Okay, it's determined by the voltage of the electric spike. So if the voltage, the pulsar is giving a higher voltage, I'm expecting that the sound beam coming out here will be high amplitude, high power, high intensity. All right. So the voltage of the electric spike is responsible for the output power. What is the unit of the sound here? We call it the decibel. We know this, right? Examples. Okay, so again, we are talking about the acoustic output power. Okay, what is the, like I told you, we have electric spikes. So this is here an example of electric spikes. So if we have a pulse made of 3 waves, so there is a series of 3 pulses or 3 electric spikes that are delivered in a series right away as a train coming out from the pulsar toward the transducer. So if these electric voltages or electric spikes, if they have a high voltage, I'm expecting to have a high amplitude. Remember, amplitude from the baseline to the peak or from the baseline to the trough. So this is amplitude. From here to here, we call it what? Peak to peak amplitude. Correct. So if I'm having here high voltage, I will get high amplitude, right? What is the result if I'm having high voltage? I will get more brightness of the image. Why? Because this output power of the ultrasound, when reflect back, will be reflecting with a high amplitude. I will get overall brightness of the image is increased. I will get also more available depth for penetration because I'm delivering high output power to the tissue. So I can expect this output power to vanish deeper than if I'm having a lower amplitude. So in lower amplitude, they usually vanish earlier, okay? But if the high amplitude, they will go deeper in the tissues because I'm having high amplitude. So this is here more available depth of penetration if I'm having high amplitude energy. What else? I might have what we call high SNR. What is SNR? Signal to noise ratio. Signal to noise ratio. What is the signal? What is the noise? Signals are the reflection that are coming from the tissues back to the transducer. They convert it here by the PZTs into electricity. You remember the piezoelectric effect. So the ultrasound signals, they are coming here, hitting the PZTs, converted to electric signals. These electric signals are going back to the transducer. So signals are coming from the patient. So what is the noise? Noise is coming from where? Noise is coming from the surrounding of the machine, electronics around the machine. Anything that is running by electricity will create an electromagnetic field around it, and this will give some noise when they are transmitted through the power, sorry, through the cord toward the machine. So I will get here electric noise. Electric noise, sometimes called contamination or interference. Okay, so this ratio between the signal and the noise will determine how much the clarity of the image. Part of the clarity of the image is determined by what is the comparison between the signal and the noise. I want to have high signal. Again, if I'm having output power, a higher output power, I will get better SNR. But keep in mind, if I'm having high output power, I'm going into the bioeffects. Consider the bioeffects now, okay? Especially if you are scanning an OB patient. Bioeffects are very sensitive here. So the more bioeffects, yes, if I'm having high output power. So in this condition, what I need to do, okay, go for a good ALARA principle. What is the ALARA principle? Okay, as low as reasonably achievable, and we'll discuss this in a couple of slides now. So what if I'm having a lower voltage? Lower voltage, the spike that is delivered is of a lower voltage. I'll get low amplitude, low power, low intensity. So again, if I'm having lower voltage, I will get lower amplitude, lower power, lower intensity. Okay, what this will affect the image? Yes, I will get less brightness of the image. Okay, and I'll get less available depth of penetration, and I'll have low SNR, less bioeffects. Okay, so this is good for a LoRa principle. So what is the ALARA principle? ALARA principle, as we mentioned earlier, this is the as low as reasonably achievable. Okay, in short, if you have an image that is dark and you want to make it bright, don't touch the output power. Don't touch the output power. Go for the gain. Why? Because the gain, if you increase the gain is actually working here in the receiver. If I'm increasing the gain, I'm going from this point to the display. I'm not touching the patient. So if I'm increasing the gain, I'm going from this step towards the display. I will get the display brighter, but again, the patient is not touched. And this is why in dark image, if I want to make it brighter, I go by the gain, increasing the overall gain. What if I'm having a bright image, a too bright image, and I want to make it darker? Okay, to save the patient that is here, to save the patient from the high energy delivered, I will lower the output power here. So lowering the output power, I will get the image darker, and again, I'm saving the patient from the high energy delivered by the ultrasound beam. The second function of the transmitter or the pulsar is what we call the PRP. Okay, PRP is what? Pulse repetition period. Okay, PRF is pulse repetition frequency. Are these controlled by the pulsar? Yes, and for sure, yes. Okay, what is the control key? The control key is the depth. So if I go deeper or I go shallower, I'm changing the PRP and PRF delivered by the transmitter, okay, or the pulsar. So the adjustable, yes, and the control key again is called the depth. If I go shallower, what happened? Okay, This is here a representation of the pulse and the receive time, pulse, receive time, pulse, receive time, pulse, receive time. So if I'm scanning shallower, what I do, if I go by the depth, for example, from 10 centimeter to 5 centimeter, I go shallower, what happened? The PRP will be shorter and the PRF will be high. So I'm getting short PRPs, that this is the time from here to here, from the start of the pulse to the start of the next pulse. This is the PRP. The PRP will get shorter, and I can get here more of the pulsations, or what we call the PRF. So shallower, I get less PRP, more PRF. We know that PRP and PRF are reciprocals, right? What if I'm going deeper? I was scanning, for example, 7 centimeter, and I need to go deeper. So what happened? I go from 7 to 15, for example. What happened? I'm elongating the listening time. So the listening time will be elongating. I need to listen longer because I'm scanning deeper. Scanning deeper, I need to listen longer. So I ask the machine, okay, don't send the pulse now. Let's finish listening. Let's finish listen to what? To the 15 centimeter depth. And then after the 15 centimeter depth reflections are received by the transducer, okay, you can send another pulse. So what happens here? The listening time is elongated, and this is the reason why I get here the whole PRP will be elongated. Elongation of the PRP, increase of the PRP. Accordingly, I will get the PRF drop. So I'm getting here lower PRF. All right. This here, I like you guys to have a note of this illustration or this diagrammatic representation. It will help you to visualize if you are in the visual. Some people are visual learners. So if you are of this group of visual learners, you will get benefit of this. So here, this is like an ultrasound image, a representation of ultrasound image. What would be the events that happen in shallow scanning? What would be the events if you go deeper scanning? So in shallow scanning, what happens again in shallow? Like I mentioned earlier, I get shorter PRP because I'm not listening for a long time. So the PRP gets shorter. What happened? The PRF will increase. The duty factor will increase and the frame rate will increase. So I'm having here all the other factors here will be increased while the PRP is decreased. So all of these are the opposite of the PRP. Again, if I'm scanning shallower, I will get less PRP, but high PRF, high duty factor, and high frame rate. Exactly the opposite will happen if I'm going deeper. If I'm going deeper, I need to listen longer. So the PRP will elongate. I'm getting longer PRPs. What happened to the others? Others will drop. I'm having the PRF will drop, the duty factor will drop, and the frame rate will drop. So if you have this in your mind, put it on a scratch paper or whatever, and put it in front of you. It will help you to memorize this structure. Of course, in the exams, you don't have time or the focusing to get to these points one by one. If you have them all in one diagram like this, it will help you in memorization what the events happen in shallow scanning, what events happen in deeper scanning. All right. Also remember one thing here: the PRF, DF, and FR, all of them are sharing the letter F. Just and I noticed this. It might help also to put them in one group. The third control of that is controlled by the pulsar or the transmitter is the operating frequency. Somebody will say, well, we didn't have this in details before. Yes. Operating frequency, we all know that some of the machines, some of the ultrasound system, you can choose by high frequency or lower frequency. And actually, there is a key control called frequency in the ultrasound machine. Okay. Sometimes it's called frequency, sometimes the control key is called the resolution / penetration, okay, or any other name. So what happens here? How can I control the frequency? Okay, the transmitted frequency. We have different settings of the pulsar based on what system we are operating with. For example, the operating frequency, if I'm having a single element probe, this is one of the probes or one of the systems that has been long time ago, and nobody is using it or is very seldom to use a single element probe nowadays in the ultrasound field. Okay, it's very limited. So what happens here, the single element probe, how the frequency is controlled, we'll come to this in a moment. What happens if I'm having what we call the multi-frequency system, or sometimes called the multi-hertz system? What happens here? I can get different frequencies under my control. Okay, I can select different frequencies that are already set in the machine. Remember, frequency I cannot adjust. Remember this, guys? Frequency is unadjustable. Yes, adjust. But what happens here? I'm selecting, I'm not adjusting. I'm selecting preset frequencies that are already built in the system that will help me to change the frequency of the probe, but I'm not adjusting the frequency. Okay? You know the difference, guys. If I'm adjusting, for example, 5 megahertz, I cannot make it 5.5. I cannot make it 5.7. This is adjustment. But I can select either 5 or 7 or 9 or whatever, right? So again, multi-frequency systems, they are non-adjustable, but you can select different frequencies. How can I do that? Also by the pulser. Another setting of the machine, if you do Doppler pulse. Pulse Doppler, either color Doppler or spectral waveform Doppler. Again, the frequency setting here is different because the Doppler pulse is much longer than the beam mode pulse. We know this, right? And then we have the operating frequency if you have continuous wave system. So again, based on the setting of the configuration of the setting you are using, okay, you get different patterns of frequency changes that you can select different frequencies based on what system you are using. Example, what will be the operating frequency controlled in a single element probe? Okay, in a single element probe, what is usually this is the example is the old mechanical probe. What happened here? There is an electric spike, a single electric spike is delivered for each ultrasound pulse. So the pulse, the ultrasound pulse that is coming out from the transducer is triggered by one spike, one electric spike. And this one electric spike coming from the pulsar straight down to the transducer, and the transducer will start what we call vibrating, and this vibration will get me the pulse. So again, the spike will excite the element to vibrate, or what we call ring. With the frequency, this is the point now. The frequency of the ultrasound element here is based on what? Based on characterizations of the PCT or the element. What is the thickness of the element? What is the propagation speed of the element? So different PCTs, different settings of the PCTs or different components of the PCTs and different cutting of the PCT. If I'm having a thin PCT, I will get a high frequency. If I'm having a thick PCT, I will get a lower frequency. Also, if I'm having a higher prop speed of the element, I will get higher frequency. If I'm having a lower prop speed of the element, I will get lower frequency. So again, the frequency in the single element is based on what? Based on the PZT itself, the element, the active element, right? So it is predetermined by the PZT, by the active element. The pulsar here has nothing to do with the frequency. It's just sending one spike, and this will excite and vibrate the ring by the PZT. Okay. Now, how can this ringing will give me a long pulse? Again, we remember the damping layer. The damping layer will limit the ringing of the active element. And we have it here. For example, here's the center or the main frequency of the determined by the active element. Okay, the thin PCT with the high prop speed, I will get high frequency, high pitch sound, high frequency sound. If I'm having a thick PCT with a lower prop speed, I will get lower frequency. So this is here one spike, one electrical spike, and these are the vibrations that are initiated by the PCT. But as we see here, by damping, the rest of the vibrations here are damped off, and I will get only, for example, a pulse made of 3 cycles, because the rest of the vibrations are damped by the damping layer. All right. Now we come to the operating frequency if we have a multi-frequency system, this was just mentioned earlier, most of the ultrasound systems now are of the multi-frequency or multi-hertz setting. How can I do that? How can I change the frequency, all right? This is the job of the pulsar. The pulsar in this condition is controlling the frequency based on what? Based on how many spikes, electric spikes, are delivered in which frequency. For example, if the system is delivering 3 electrical spikes, so the resulting pulse will be 3 waves. Okay, if these electric spikes are close to each other, meaning that they are of high frequency, okay, I will get a high frequency 3 cycles in one pulse. Okay, so we'll cut to this in a moment. So again, there is a certain set number of electric spikes, 2 or 3. These are based on the electric, not the electric, I mean the sound pulse is made of 2 or 3 cycles, 2 or 3 waves. If I'm having a sound pulse made of 2 waves, okay, I need to have 2 spikes. If the ultrasound system gives an ultrasound pulse made of 3 waves, the system will deliver 3 spikes, okay? So they are predetermined. Frequency of these spikes will determine the frequency of the waves within the pulse. Okay, so this will excite the crystal to create sound pulse with a predetermined number of cycles and predetermined frequency. Let's have an example here. Okay, this is a diagrammatic. I just made it to make it easier for us to understand. So this is the pulse wave. Okay, so I'm having here the pulsar sending 3 spikes with certain frequency. Okay, coming here, and this will excite or make the PCT deliver 3 ultrasound waves with the same frequency delivered by the spikes. So the electric spikes here, the frequency of the electric spikes will determine the frequency of the sound pulse, the frequency of the waves inside the sound pulse. Okay, how many cycles, how many waves, also determined by the pulsar, how many electric spikes. So if I'm having a lower frequency, this will be the situation. If I'm having high frequency, what will happen? I'll get here the ultrasound pulses, sorry, the electric spikes are close to each other. They are sent with a determined frequency. So this determined frequency will determine the frequency of the sound pulse here. So that's the waves in the sound pulse. So these are here the ultrasound waves within the pulse. So the pulse here is made of 3 waves with this high frequency. Okay, so again, the frequency of the sound in the multi-frequency sound, the frequency of the sound is determined by the pulsar. I can change it, yes. Again, you mentioned we have a control key called the frequency, or sometimes called the resolution or penetration or other names. Another machine setting or another setting of the ultrasound system that we might apply Doppler. Doppler, we can apply Doppler either in color or spectral waveform. So what happens here? I have another set of pulses which are called the Doppler pulse. The Doppler pulse, as we all know, that they are different from the beam mode pulse. Different in what way? Different in the number of cycles in the pulse and different in the frequency of the cycles of the pulse. Because, for example, if you use the B mode, okay, you need to have high frequency sound, better to have a high frequency sound. But with the Doppler, I need to have, better to have a low frequency sound. So the frequency is different. Also, the Doppler pulse, it has many cycles, more than the B mode cycle. The B mode pulse has, for example, 2 to 3 cycles, but the Doppler pulse, usually they have a range between 6 minimum up to 30 maximum. This range is different from one manufacturer to the other, but this is the average of settings of pulse of number of cycles in the pulse. Okay, so how this is done? The machine or the pulsar is sending a number of electric voltages or spikes that are delivered to the transducer to to initiate Doppler pulse. The Doppler pulse here again is made of 6 to 30 cycles. So according to this, I might get pulse duration is increased, SPL is increased. So according to this, I'm having here, this almost like 12, I don't know how many, but probably 12 cycles in this pulse. So I will get here pulse duration is increased. SPL is increased, meaning that the axial resolution, and this is one of the things that you need to know, that the axial resolution in Doppler is worse than the axial resolution in the B mode, okay? Because of the low frequency and because of the many cycles in the pulse. Accordingly, I have a long SPL and a long pulse duration. Now, what if I'm operating the continuous wave application? Continuous wave, we have a continuous stream of electric spikes that are delivered to the ultrasound transducer. And this continuous stream of electric spikes will come out from the transducer as continuous stream of sound waves. So accordingly to this, I will get a long non-stop stream of of uh, electric electric spikes coming from the transducer, from the pulsar, straight to the transducer, and the transducer will give me non-stop stream of sound waves. Here's some illustration that shows you how it looks like when you have low frequency continuous wave and high frequency continuous wave. This is here the spikes, electric spikes that are delivered with a certain frequency, as you see, that will coincide with the frequency of the sound. And as you see here, they are non-stop. Non-stop means that it's not a pulse, it's a continuous wave, right? Continuous wave, non-stop stream of electric voltages with representing as non-stop stream of sound pulse, sound waves, but there the sound waves here, the frequency is controlled by the pulsar. If you're having a high frequency sound, continuous sound, what happens? I will get, originally I will have high frequency electric spikes coming from the transducer, from the pulsar, that are delivered to the transducer, and the transducer will convert this to non-stop stream of continuous waves. Thank you everybody, and see you later in another lecture. Have a wonderful day.